Hey, folks, I'm glad you joined us. So, on a summer night in Gilroy, California, a creature 8 to 10 feet tall glided out of the creek brush, bat like wings, red eyes, and rubbery hide that shouldn't have been able to fly. It flapped only 3 times and just floated away. Tonight, living gargoyles from Chicago to Chile to West Virginia and beyond. What are we really seeing? Undiscovered predators, interdimensional anomalies, or something far older and elusive? Good evening. I'm Lon, and this is Phantoms and Monsters Radio, where the veil lifts one story at a time. Now, if you're new, welcome. Tonight's subject is living gargoyles. Now, quick favor, tap the like button so more experiencers can find us. Please subscribe and consider using the super chat, super thanks buttons on YouTube or the PayPal or buy me a coffee links in the description. Place all your questions, all caps, and we'll do a focused Q&A near the end of the show. Now, in the first report, the witness states, when I was 12, I attended a sleepover that gathered 20 young girls in one bedroom apartment. I ended up sleeping on the kitchen floor wrapped in just a blanket. In the middle of the night, I woke up and looked up to see a tall, dark figure crouching on the counter like a gargoyle, holding itself up with one arm on the cabinet above. I immediately closed my eyes. After a few minutes, I decided to open my eyes again. The figure was now standing at my feet, looking down at me. Now, at that moment, I believe I saw that it had a pale or white skin, but I don't remember any facial features. I squeezed my eyes shut once more and kept them closed until I felt the sunlight on my face. I felt cold and sick. I texted my mom to pick me up and left before anyone else woke up. Now, this was not a dream, though it could have been an hallucination. I have never hallucinated before or since, and I don't believe it was sleep paralysis. I think I was frozen in fear. As for the girl who hosted the sleepover, she moved away and we lost contact. Her father spent time in jail for assaulting one of her friends. So the figure I saw was tall in an inhumane way and very thin. Now, her father looked nothing like that, so I know it wasn't him. Tragically, one of his daughters died 10 years later. In remembering her, we shared stories and I recounted my experience. A friend of hers told me she's always said something dark followed her dad around. Even 16 years later, I have never experienced anything like that again. Who or what did I see? Now, in this next account, the witness tells. In December of 2019, I had an unusual experience in Tampa, Florida, when I spotted a winged creature. It was early in the morning, light enough to see, but not fully daylight yet. As I approached a curve in the road, I knew I was approaching a traffic light that was usually red, and I always had to stop for it. But that morning, I found myself as the first vehicle stopped at the intersection. I focused on the traffic light, waiting for it to turn green, and then noticed something moving to my left. It was flying from left to right or south to north. Now, I won't lie, I didn't get a good look at it or a long look at it, but in just a few seconds, it was as clear as I can imagine. It resembled a gargoyle with large bat like wings held tightly in front of it and its legs positioned similarly. It was gliding through the air and its wings weren't flapping. I don't claim to have the best eyesight or to be an expert on distances, but I'm confident in what I saw. I could gauge its size, which appeared to be about that of a large man, and it wasn't far in front of me. There were various objects around to help me with my perception. Could it have been something other than a gargoyle? Of course, I'm not crazy. That's just how it looked to me. Now, I will note that there have been similar sightings throughout the Tampa area over this past 10 years or so, so she may actually have seen something. So the next witness states, about 15 years ago, I was living along Uvis Creek in my hometown of Gilroy, California. It was late summer, around 12:30 a.m. to shortly after 1 o'clock a.m. when my two companions I heard a horrifying scream coming from far down the creek. I had been planning to go outside to check on my neighbor's tent, which was close to the source of that high-pitched cry, as if someone was being killed. The tent was empty, just as I expected. Now, as I started to take the trail back to my spot, it wasn't very dark because the moon was nearly complete. I was almost back when I heard a sound, three whooshes of air, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I turned towards the creek and looked at the bend, not expecting to see what I saw. From behind the trees and shrubs emerged a creature that looked like a devilish gargoyle with bat-like wings. It stood about 8 to 10 foot tall with red eyes and a red mouth, and it floated, not flying. Its skin had a dense, rubbery texture. I remember thinking, don't look at me, as I stayed perfectly still. As it continued to float past me, my friend who was watching out for me asked, "What are you doing?" I replied, come here, as the creature approached the next bend. Rich caught a glimpse of its back and exclaimed, "What the heck is that?" Now, for the past 15 years, I've shared my story hoping someone would believe me. Unfortunately, people often think that you're crazy. However, this year in 2024, 4 others have claimed to have seen the same creature in the past 6 months on 2 occasions. What really troubles me is how it could stay in the air only flapping its wings 3 times. It was enormous. There's no way it should have been able to remain airborne, yet it did. I know what I saw that night, and nothing will change my mind. Now, if you just joined us, we're discussing living gargoyles, with more witnesses reports to come. Please like the stream so other witnesses can find us. Now start getting your questions ready so that you can drop them in all caps for our Q&A in a bit. Now, the following report was forwarded to me a few years ago. In the jungles of Chile, predators hungry for flesh are rarely seen, but are often feared. Countless strange beasts provoke nightmares and myths that have transcended generations. One night in 2004, a small family had a harrowing encounter with a mysterious creature. Now, in July 2004, Carlos Abet de la Torre, an Army sub-officer in the Cazadores Regiment, along with his wife Teresa, the three children, and a nephew, departed from their quarters located in the military community of Pozo Almonte, Chile. They were headed toward Arica to visit some relatives. About 2 hours into their journey, Carlos was driving at approximately 65 miles an hour through the Pampa Acha, around 20 miles south of Arica. The road ahead was lit not only by the headlights of the pickup truck, but also by the bright moon shining in the clear sky. It was then that Carlos' eldest daughter, Carmen, noticed two extraordinary entities through the back window of the vehicle. Now, according to Carmen, she was astonished to see two creatures seemingly floating in the sky above. In her words, "I was in the back seat with my brothers talking, and suddenly everything went dark. I told my brothers what I was seeing, and he told me to keep quiet because Mom gets nervous. Later, I looked through the window and saw some things that resembled birds, but with dogs' heads and back-swept wings. My father said they were like gargoyles." Carmen estimated that the strange airborne creature flying over her father's truck were at least 6 feet in length. Initially, she wasn't sure whether the creatures had wings or legs, but she noted that the appendages were angled toward the back of the creatures. From her vantage point, Teresa had the best view of these unusual animals, which the press would later describe as dog-faced kangaroos. She claimed that the gargoyles seemed to match the speed of the truck, occasionally speeding ahead or falling back, but never traveling more than 60 feet away from the vehicle. In a state of panic and fearing an attack, the family couldn't take their eyes off the gargoyle. Carlos began to pray, pressing down on the accelerator, even though he knew he shouldn't be driving that fast on such roads. "We were speechless for about 10 minutes," said Carmen. "My mom told us to react and then started discussing what we had seen. Just when the Torre family was getting used to the flying creatures, two more of the same kind appeared. As the family grew accustomed to the creatures above, another pair of gargoyles jumped in from the truck on the powerful hind legs, which were shorter than the upper legs. Carlos slammed on the brakes to avoid hitting them, while two more circled overhead. He managed to swerve around the gargoyles, eager to escape. He quickly accelerated again, leaving the creatures behind. Remarkably, they did not give chase, and Carlos, whose face was slick with sweat, successfully kept his family safe from a frightening encounter. Now, upon safely arriving in Arica, the family shared the bizarre experience with their relatives, but swore them to secrecy. They were concerned the public ridicule could jeopardize Carlos' military career. He was the man of the house and could not allow himself to be humiliated. As you can imagine, when it was time to go home, the entire family was extremely anxious. "We were terrified to go back," said Teresa. Fortunately, during the return trip, they didn't encounter the gargoyles again. They remained quiet about their encounter until one day, Sub-Officer Diego Rigalme, a good friend of Carlos, approached him looking shell-shocked. "You won't believe me, Carlos, but last night I saw a gargoyle." A few weeks later, the two men came forward with their stories. The media jumped on the story. Suddenly, the monsters of the Pan American Highway were all the rage. Sensationalist articles poured out, and soon the world's press was all over the tale. Predictably, Carlos and Diego faced ridicule. Many suggested it might have been an ostrich that escaped from a local breeder. However, The media overlooked the fact that no ostriches had been reported missing. After all, ostriches can't fly. Perhaps the Tory family was tired or affected by something unusual in the jungle, but Diego wasn't tired. So the question remains, what are the gargoyles of Chile? I want to thank Mortal Clown for their donation. Appreciate it. Now, this next witness states, I wanted to provide an accurate description of the Mothman as I observed them close in my backyard in McDowell County, West Virginia, near the town of Bradshaw back in 2011. I watched them for some time in horror as they perched in the trees. They had elongated skulls, and their noses and mouths resembled those of a cat, opening from one side to reveal 4 rows of teeth. They were both males and females. The male stood about 9 foot tall, while the female was perhaps 2 feet shorter. They perched in the trees like gargoyles, but could stand up, allowing me to get a very good look at them. Their eyes and skulls were elongated, and their teeth were sharpened to a point. They had a mix of brown and black coloring, with black on parts of their face, feet, and hands. Their wings were black with talons and resembled those of an angel, not butterfly wings. The portrayal in the movie Jeepers Creepers was somewhat close, except for the face. When they took flight, the wind created by their wings made the ground tremble beneath them. Now, during my observation, which lasted almost an hour, I noticed that they seemed to communicate telepathically. There was a sound coming from them that resembled an old locomotive screeching, and they clacked their teeth at one another before taking off. They were truly frightening creatures. Now, if I had to guess, I believe that they had been with us all along, as I suspect these creatures live underground and hunt at night. Their red eyes glow when the light hits them. It felt like I was seeing fallen angels, certainly not the pretty ones depicted in pictures. I believe God is the master of the skies and has many creatures that mankind has yet to discover. My experience has made me pay closer attention to my surroundings, and I now always check the trees. I am of sound mind and would not lie about such a serious matter. I witnessed these events firsthand. Now, this next account, the witness states, this occurred on July 4th, 2008 in Toledo, Ohio, located in northwest Ohio near the Michigan border. We had just finished watching the fireworks, and instead of fighting the traffic to leave, we decided to hang out and enjoy some quality family time. My boyfriend at the time was lying on a blanket looking up the stars. Now, after a while, he suddenly exclaimed, "Hey, what the hell is that?" I was the first to look up, and at first I thought he was pointing out a plane passing by. But he insisted, no, look at that. There was a vast black mass flying slowly across the sky, blocking out starlight as it moved. It was flying much slower than a bird would, which struck me as unusual. Imagine the size of a pterodactyl. That's how big this was. It had thin membrane wings, like those of a pterodactyl, which stood out to me because they looked somewhat translucent. The body was stocky like a gargoyle, but large. It was a strange sight. I drew my mom's attention to it, and she and my brother also saw it. We all initially reacted with skepticism. My mom said, "It's a plane," but I replied, "No, Mom, look." I can't explain why, but seeing it terrified me, and that fear lingered. Now, rationally, there's no reason for me to be scared. It wasn't approaching us. It could have been something else entirely, but I know what I saw. When I tried to share my experience, people dismissed it by saying, "Oh, it could have been the Mothman. That's in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. This is Ohio." Yet now, folks are reporting sightings in Michigan, making me ecstatic that people are finally coming forward with similar experiences. Now, for a long time, I didn't know how to report such an incident. Who do you call? 911? Do you report a weird moth-like human creature flying through the sky? It felt so strange to share even with friends, let alone authorities. However, I recently discovered that there are ways to report these sightings as others have been doing. Once, while I was out with friends and a bit tipsy, I finally opened up about my experience. Before I could explain what I had seen, I just mentioned that it happened on July 4th. The person I was talking to replied, "Flying?" I nodded and he continued, "In the sky, like a human flying thing." I said, "Yes." Then he revealed he had seen it as well. He told me that he was at a friend's house that night, and when I spotted it, that's when I spotted it. It was on the path towards the woods where he was. Once it reached the tree line, it swooped down and flew within 20 feet of them as they sat around a bonfire. It didn't get a clear look at it, but they saw enough to recognize it had some human-like figures. Had some human-like figure with wings. When they tried to explain it to others at the bonfire who hadn't seen it, everyone assumed that they were just drunk and dismissed their account. So that's my story. I saw Mothman, and it turned out to be a mass sighting. Not only did the people I was with see it, but those at the bonfire witnessed it as well. There are probably others at the fireworks who saw it also, but to my knowledge, none of them reported it. If anyone had, surely it would have surfaced along with the others, yet it hasn't. It might not be a traditional scary story. I didn't see it up close and it didn't swoop down right in front of me. However, I was close enough to know it wasn't natural and was something I'm pretty sure most people haven't seen in their lives. So this next account, the witness states, it's has always been my hope to find a creature tale similar to mine, but I have yet to find one. The story I'm about to share is true. Since the day I laid eyes on it, I have never seen a creature like the one I was about to describe, and to this day it remains unmatched. My story begins in a small town of Bluefield, West Virginia. My family had just moved into a house on Longview Avenue. I was just a small child at the time, and I was afraid of nothing. I noticed that the neighbors 2 houses down had long hedges surrounding their backyards. Now, being a curious child, I decided to crawl underneath the hedges to see what was on the other side. Now, inside the bushes, I found barbed wire. Now, as a small child, I was able to squeeze through it without much trouble. When I emerged on the other side, I discovered a pond, and all around the pond were witching balls scattered throughout the yard. Now, later in my life, I learned that farmers used to place these in their fields to scare away witches, as it is said that once witches see the reflection, they flee the area. Now, as I emerged from the other side and took in these strange sights, I noticed someone had seen me from inside the house. Frantic, I dashed back under the brush. The man who lived there came out running and shouting, "Get out! Get out!" I ran straight to my house, but somehow the man knew where I lived. He hurried up to our front yard and told my mother never to let me back in his backyard, and then he left. He was an odd fellow, resembling Alan Funt from Candid Camera. He had a white birthmark on his head and looked like paint that had been dropped on him, and wore a sneaky grin. Now, as a young boy, I loved to climb trees. Now, one day, my friend and I climbed a tree, and to our amazement, we could see over the hedges. What we saw was a couple from the 2 houses down sunbathing in lounge chairs, naked no less. And to make it even stranger, it was snowing that day. My friend asked me why they were doing that, and to this day, I still have no clue. At night, I could hear the couple playing the piano and singing Christian tunes, but their music wasn't heavenly. It was actually quite scary, even morbid. They sang with such harshness and loudness, hitting the piano keys with what could only be described as banging a hammer. But none of that was the creepiest part of my experience. One day, while playing with my Matchbox car near the bushes, I made a bad decision. I was sitting there in broad daylight when I suddenly noticed rustling in the hedges. I looked over and out popped what I can only describe as a gargoyle. It looked at me with solid, pointed black eyes and had frog green skin. Its face resembled a frog's, but it also had teeth and ears that I will never forget. Its ears flared outward like two big green gloves on either side of its head, much like the king depicted on Gargoyle statue. Its body was shaped like a bulldog, and its webbed feet turned inward as it walked. When it noticed me, it paused, opened its mouth wide, and hissed, holding its mouth open as if to taste the air. I was so terrified that I was completely paralyzed. I tried to cry out for help, but no sound came out. Then, as if someone had pressed the play button on my fear, I sprinted home so fast that I don't even remember the race to get there. In a panic, I tried to describe the creature to my mom. She pointed to the animal pictures in a childcraft book and said, "See if you can show me the picture of the animal." The closest animal I could find that resembled was that of a koala, but I only chose that animal because it had a similar black pointed eyes. My mother laughed and said, "Son, those animals are only in Australia. What you probably saw was a dog." And just like that, it was never spoken of again. Years later, after the strange couple had long since left, a preacher and his wife purchased the house. They hired me to mow the lawn and maintain the property. One day, I had to go to the basement to retrieve something, and an overwhelming sense of panic washed over me as soon as I stepped inside. I could feel a dark energy in that room that I can't describe. I told the preacher about the man who had chased me out of the yard when I was a boy. He explained that it was because a little girl had drowned in a pond and the family had sued the strange man. Now, I'm not quite sure what all these events have in common, but I have never seen a creature like the one I encountered that day. Because of that experience, I've always been afraid of the dark, knowing that monsters can exist, and I saw one. Now, the next witness states, "I live in the Dene Navajo Nation in New Mexico. It was around 2 a.m. when I was driving home with a friend. There was very little traffic on the highway. Up ahead, I noticed what appeared to be a man sitting on a guardrail. A horrible feeling settled in my gut, a sense that something bad was about to happen. I genuinely feared he might jump in the front of our truck to commit suicide. As we approached, he stood up, and I quickly swerved into the next lane. However, he began walking on the road, causing me to panic. There was no time to slow down, and I couldn't swerve to avoid him from fear of rolling the truck. My friend and I started screaming. Just as we were about to hit what I thought was a man, he jumped and revealed wings, soaring over the entire truck. It was visible for only a second, but I still vividly remember it. From the head to the waist, it had the body of a man, but from the waist down, it was hairy. The wings were dark, and the feet were almost disturbing part. Instead of human feet, it had horrifying talons that looked like that of a chicken, but also dark and hairy. The best comparison I can make is that it looked like a human-sized gargoyle. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. If my friend hadn't witnessed it too, I would think I'd lost my mind. Interestingly, over the years since that night, I have met one other person who had seen the same, or at least a remarkable similar creature. Now, I was contacted by a witness by the name of Edward from Kansas City, Kansas, by telephone after he read my book, Mothman Dynasty, Chicago's Winged Humanoids. He wanted to share an encounter he had. Now, Edward recounted an incident involving him and his cousin during the summer of 1999 between 10 and 11 p.m. local time. Now, they were traveling southbound on I-49 toward Joplin, Missouri, with Edward at the wheel. While he couldn't recall the exact location, he mentioned that they were only a few miles from Joplin. He noticed a tall figure quickly running from his left and then directly in front of his car. Now, both he and his cousin observed this humanoid thing, and they immediately remarked to each other that it looked like a gargoyle. The headlights illuminated the figure clearly enough for both witnesses to provide a detailed description. The creature stood at least 6.5 feet tall with dark, leathery, hairless skin covered its body. It turned to look at the witnesses, revealing a face with starkly flat features and large, deep-set eyes. The being had large wings that lay flat against its back, but were extended as it ran across the highway. Edward believes the creature began to ascend into the air, moving above the adjacent field. Now, Edward noted that he had no other comparison for the humanoid except for a gargoyle. However, after watching the film Jeepers Creepers, released in 2001, he remarked that the humanoid resembled the character known as the Creeper. Initially, both witnesses kept the encounter to themselves, but a few years later, after Edward married, he and his cousin shared the incident with his wife. The witness expressed gratitude for the opportunity to tell his story without fear of being thought crazy. Now, this next witness states, whatever you want to believe is fine, but I assure you that the following account is valid. Some time ago, a friend and I were driving home on a rural road in Tyne and Wear, UK. It was about 4 a.m. on a misty, cold winter's night. My friend was driving slowly due to the icy and snowy conditions as we approached a junction, and I was on the passenger seat on the left side of the car, as customary in the UK. Suddenly, from the right side of the car, I saw a winged creature flying across the road towards us. It was approximately 1.5 to 2 feet in length, white in color, and appeared somewhat opaque, featuring a human-like face. The wings were flapping as it flew, and its knees drawn up and the head tilted forward, seeming to chatter and point ahead as if scolding someone or complaining to itself. It took no notice of us, and as we slowly turned at the junction, it flew directly into the headlights on the driver's side. There was no sound or indication that we had hit anything. It simply disappeared, and we didn't stop. I looked at my friend and asked, "Did you see what I saw?" And he replied, "A wing thing," and continued driving. We have discussed this encounter many times, but I never solved the mystery of what it was or how it appeared. Recently, I searched online and found an image that closely resembles what I saw, a statue of a devil-like gargoyle. Now, while the face was quite as extreme, it reminded me of what I had witnessed. Any sensible explanation or insights would be appreciated. Now, that was the last account. Now, if you have a question, please use all caps and place it into the chat. Okay, let's see. Grandizer 12. Question. Lon Strickler, do you think that gargoyles are one of the oldest cryptids? Maybe predating Owlman, Mothman, and other flying humanoids or flying cryptids? It's a possibility, I suppose. But then again, you know, people could be mistaking it for something else as well. You know, many of the accounts that we received from the Chicago sightings were also described as gargoyles, and it could have very well been something else, even a Mothman or another type of winged creature. I don't know. I mean, you know, the gargoyle sightings. Look, when you think of gargoyle, you think of the grotesque statues that are on churches, mostly over in Great Britain or in Europe. The fact that people see living gargoyles and describe them as that, you know, that makes you think, but who knows? Grandizer 12. Question, Lon Stricker. If so, do you think that maybe some witnesses have gotten these cryptids confused with each other or not? Yeah, I think they could have, but who knows? I mean, you know, a lot of descriptions I get for other winged humanoids, uh, even those without the leathery wings or the bat shaped wings, are very similar in body style, though many times they're more emaciated. But sure, could be crossovers. Dagnammit, do you think a gargoyle is some type of a dragon? Um, maybe, maybe. I mean, if all dragons are the same size as humans, then maybe it is, but maybe it's a smaller dragon. Who knows? Um, I have had a couple of dragon sightings associated with areas where there had been gargoyles sighted. That is true, even in Chicago. But the dragon was huge, so I don't know what they saw or what they perceived, but I guess it's possible. Grandizer 12, question Lon. You may have covered the early 1980s gargoyle sighting that was on top of a NASA building. Do you have any more information on this? By the way, it was covered via William DeFalco. Um, I don't quite recall that account. Uh, maybe if you can give me a little more information, but I don't recall that. Now I see Dagnama is in the chat. Why? Okay, why are these gargoyle statues on gutters on castles? I don't know. I don't know the whole story about the grotesques or the gargoyles that are on castles and buildings and churches and such, especially in Europe. Now there are a few here in the United States, and in fact, the National Cathedral in Washington actually has small gargoyles on it. So yeah, they are here as well. I don't know what the whole story is with the gargoyle statues. I mean, is it if somebody knows, put it up here on the chat because I'd like to know as well. Are they are they supposed to be watchers? Are they supposed to be something that scares bad spirits away? I have no idea. Anything else, folks? Last chance. They're to ward off evil, Sir Wolf says. So that's possible. Paranormalism Net says, ask the Vatican why they're on the Notre Dame Cathedral. And Barbara Moore says, to scare away. Paranormalism Net says, ask the Vatican why they're on the Notre Dame Cathedral. Just hang on a second. My alarm went off. And Barbara Moore says, to scare away. Sorry about that, folks. It'll be just a second here. That just popped up all of a sudden. I don't know why. But you got any more questions? Grandizer 12 line. It was sort of hinted that there was a space shuttle launch during the space shuttle launch in the 80s that had some time into gargoyles. What it was, it was unknown. Yeah, I had. Now that you said that, I may have recalled hearing something about that, but I don't know the full story. Interesting. Surfing scientist sailor. Lon, do you think these cryptids live here or do they come through portals or what? I have said from the very beginning since I've been involved with this Chicago incident, these sightings in Chicago and in Chicagoland, that it seems to me from the evidence or the anecdotal evidence that I received from witnesses that they are not on this earth permanently. In fact, many witnesses I've seen them literally disappear like they're going through an invisible doorway and vice versa, just showing up instantly. So I personally believe that they're interdimensional or gateway travelers. Hard to tell. Granddaughter 12, Lon, with the Chile gargoyle sightings, what do you think it might be? I know it's not an isolated incident. Who knows? I really don't know. And I know there have been gargoyle sightings in South America. Um, and honestly, most of the sightings that I have recalled reading about have been very similar to what they have seen in Chicago, though the bodies, again, are a little bit bigger and they're not as emaciated. Granddaughter 12, Lon, while Chile has maybe the most sightings tied in with the UAP activity in the country. Well, we got a lot of reports from Chile, Argentina, and of course Brazil for the most part. So, yeah, there's a lot of culture involved with UAP sightings and other flying being sightings. I don't really have an answer, but I know we do get a lot of reports. Jose Sanchez, as with Bigfoot and Dogman, have there been accounts of fights breaking out between gargoyles and Mothman? I haven't heard of that one. Who knows if they're not even the same thing, but I haven't heard of any type of incident where they retaliate or fought each other. Anything else? Okay, well, now if you've had a winged humanoid encounter, gargoyle, Mothman, or etc., email me at lonstricklerfamsmonster.com with date, location, and your detailed observation or experience. Please like and subscribe and share this with anyone who drives the lonely roads or watches the sky. Also, we're integrating a newsletter with the website, and you can sign up at famsmonsters.com. If you look to the top of the website on the homepage, there's a link for a newsletter. You'll see it up there. So just click that, put your information in, and when we start to get it sent out, we'll get it out to you. So until the next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep looking up. Good night.